if at the beginning of the day we thought about how do I want to be in community and connect with another human today, and we made that as important as getting our work done or getting to the gym or doing the laundry or whatever it is we have to do, or integrating it into those things, we might not be as lonely. We don't all live in these little villages where we were born and we're going to live our lives and die. Our communities aren't pre-made for us for the most part, right? Our families are spread across the country. Our circumstances have changed. Our work is virtual. We don't have to go into offices. We don't have to see each other. We're not communing with nature as we till the land. We have to be more intentional about all kinds of things. Staying connected to other people is no different. Hi, I'm Sarah Schmidt. I'm 52 years old, and I can honestly say that I have never felt better. For the first 50 years of my life, I navigated some pretty fucking hard things that I like to call my Holy Schmidt moments. They include things like being diagnosed with cancer, navigating my sexuality, adopting children, two divorces, losing my dad, and having a biological child in my 40s. After decades of some really, really hard work, I have fallen deeply in love with myself and my life. Turns out that embracing the magic and the expansion that comes with getting older, it isn't a bad place to start. I'm here to prove that life doesn't have to decline with age. In fact, it gets a whole lot better. On Holy Schmidt, we are going to dive into my curiosities around wellness and longevity and mindset, and we are going to do it with really vulnerable, thoughtful conversations with people that I really love and admire. This season, we are going to celebrate and honor growth and transformation and find profound beauty in connection. Welcome to the show. It blew my mind halfway through the recording of this season. We forgot one of the most important things that you're supposed to put in your stress kit. Connection, relationships, all the ways in which we stay connected to people are so critical for living healthy, vibrant lives. So today, Jess and Grace and I sit down to have a chat about connection, community, collaboration, why it's so important, how to find it, what to do when you can't, and how to savor it in your life at all the different stages. I'm so excited for you to tune in to this episode of Holy Schmidt. Connection, community. This is our last episode about the pillars of the stress kit. It's funny, when we were talking about the stress kit for so long, we didn't have community in it. And I think I woke up one morning and texted you guys and I was like, oh my God, we forgot what might be the most important one. Mm-hmm. Connection. How do we connect with others? I'm excited to talk to you guys about this. I have my own perspective on its importance. And there's been quite a bit out in the world, in recent years, decades, about how lonely people are and how our social media, digital universe has created such isolation, only further impacted by diseases that spread rapidly throughout the globe and kept people isolated from others.
Can't tag us, YouTube.
Cannot tag us, YouTube, for saying the word. But people are lonely. They are longing for connection. And in some ways, we've learned so many things that we can do, right? As humanity, all the things we've figured out, and yet we seem to be more isolated. And in general, I'm not saying we, the three of us, but
they say we're in a loneliness epidemic. We're in a time where that is so prevalent, more so than any other time in history, which makes sense because where we're at with technology. But
yeah, I feel like also everybody having work from home jobs and living half of our lives now on the internet, it creates this false sense of connection, but your body isn't feeling that sense of, I sat next to someone today, I felt someone else's energy. And so it's an interesting thing to check in on, where have we falsified this sense of connection with social media or Zoom calls, or even listening to podcasts, but we're actually living 80% of our lives all by ourselves.
It's interesting because I feel so connected to the two of you. We've spent a lot of time on Zoom, but we've also spent a lot of time in person, and we spent a lot of time texting and voice chatting and all that kind of stuff. And I wonder, is it because we've spent time in person? Is it because it's the depth of what we've shared? Is it the consistency? Because technology has not gotten in the way for me from feeling a really strong sense of community with you and with a lot of people. And so I wonder if it's even something more, because I think our devices they can obstruct connection, but I think there's something more to it.
There's so many different types of relationships, right? Like I've had so many cyber relationships go wrong, especially in the dating world, where it's like, okay, is the sense of somebody that you're getting online the same as it shows up in real life? And I think one thing about our connection is it does match, right? Like the same version you're getting via text, phone, or Zoom is the same version you get in real life. So you can actually trust that connection rather than like feeling like, oh, this person is kind of a fraud or they're just out here doing this or that. So I think when somebody's consistent in the expression of themselves, it lets you trust them and actually feel connected to them, as opposed to them feeling like far away and uncertain about whether or not they match who they claim to be.
I think you said something really important there, Sarah, is like the depth of connection. Because you can have a lot of, I guess the two things you would like quantify the relationship is length of time and then quality, right? And it's like the depth allows for deeper quality. So if you have less time in person with someone, but you have deeper, more meaningful conversations, more vulnerability is shared. I think also they talk about like if you share certain emotional experiences, like people who go on adventures together or they travel together or they're doing something that they have to like face their fear or their growth edge and they're going together, there's like a bond that forms between them versus if you're just like grabbing coffee, and I think the type of conversations that the three of us have tend to always go deep in some way, shape, or form. And Sarah, you drive us in the adventure direction, making sure that we're overcoming our fears, no matter where we're going. So there's a lot of data points for why that relationship would be deepened and fortified, plus quantity of time. We've known each other now for multiple years. Mm-hmm. So I think all of those things impact connection. And I think about just cycles of friends and community and connection throughout the years, like friends that I've had in high school or college who don't live anywhere near me, but we keep in touch through voice notes or text messages or maybe sending memes. And then in that rare chance that we can align everyone together for a girls' trip, it feels like we picked up where we left off. Like we really honor the growth. Like we're able to see like, okay, you have evolved, you're a different person. Oh, I honor where you're at now. But there's such a sense of like, wow, cool. We can just keep growing from here. And there's something so powerful about that. But I also find when I have those experiences, there's a little bit of grief because I'm like, dang, like I wish there was closer proximity so we could have this more often. But also it is so beautiful that I even have it at all. Curious how you guys feel about those relationships over time.
As you were speaking, I was thinking like, there's different types of relationships. Like there's those kind of relationships for sure. And then there's ones that are more consistently chatting. And then there's people that like live in your neighborhood and you go on a walk with them. So you don't actually have to chat. You just like see them when you go on a walk. And then there's like family and partnership. And everything sort of works in perfect harmony when you have a variety. But like when you're just putting all your dependence for connection in one person, that's when things sort of get sour or uneven. And I've noticed in different friendships, like times where I get like hyper way too close with somebody and like almost abandoned into that relationship where I don't hang out with my other friends as much. Like and nothing good ever really comes of it. It's like a lot of depth and learning, but, usually there's like a fallout or one person gets sick of the other person. But when you're more balanced about it and you're not like trying to get anything out of those relationships, but instead you have a community of different types, the balance can be quite nice. So I definitely have relationships like you're saying, where it's like we catch up on the phone and then I see them once a year and it's like, this is amazing. I wish we could do this more. But I'm not depending on them like to fulfill my everyday connection needs. And I've become more aware of even times when people, need me a little bit too much in terms of like, they don't have that variety of relationships. So they're depending on me. And I'm like, oh, I don't have the capacity to like be more in this relationship than the check-in or the friend walk or the whatever person. So I think also kind of looking at boundaries and energetics around your ecosystem of relationships is really interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah? Like how have your friendships evolved, especially through motherhood and having kids and, multiple marriages? I'm sure each marriage had like a social group in and of its own as well. What does that look like for you?
My closest friends are the women that were moms of my kids' preschool classmates. And I think talking to other moms in my age range, it's kind of a common story. You become good friends with those parents that you see at pickup and drop off. In our case, it was a little 6-month-old parent-infant class where we sat in the class with Will when he was a baby and, took turns. And, the other moms were in the room. And so, I mean, those are probably my go-to women now. I have friends from earlier in my life, and they live in different parts around the country. A couple weeks ago, I had lunch with a woman that I went to high school with, and we've probably only seen each other 3 or 4 times since we graduated from high school. Now that's now like 35 years. Okay. It's a really long time. And yet when we sat together at lunch, God, it was so fun because we were able to connect around the funny high school things. And we weren't even like the best of friends in high school. I had a very kind of a weird high school experience in a small town, small class, kind of divisive group of girls. I didn't leave high school with just tons of friends. But all these points of connection of kind of growing up in the same town and having the same teachers and having kind of a core set of values that we both share. And then she was really interested in the topics that I've been talking about on the podcast. And it was just really cool to walk away from that lunch thinking, yeah, this relationship has spanned almost 40 years. And we'll see each other probably in a year. And it'll be great. Would I call her when I'm in a crisis? No. You asked the question about, marriages and divorce. There's so much I can say. It was hard. The first divorce way more than the second. So, our lives were so profoundly interconnected. We became a couple when we were in our very early 20s. We were part of the build your life phase together. So we built it together and then built it with other people. Some people felt like they had to choose between us, right? And had to pick one or the other. Some people were just uncomfortable by the fact that we were getting divorced and just kind of ghosted us or one of us. And some people had, I'm going to say, like the emotional maturity to be able to engage with just 2 human beings who were choosing to divorce and co-parent and respect the way we were doing it and stay connected to both of us, maybe one more than the other. But there was a long period of time where that was being sorted out. And I remember being very lonely and not sure who was still with me. I've heard other people talk about this with divorce. I will say in particular, I have and continue to have great admiration for my friends who hold my ex-spouses in high regard. that never got on the, demonization bandwagon. It just kind of towed that line of like, yeah, you're making this choice. We love you. He is a human being who deserves our respect and was doing his best. She, same thing. Those are the kinds of relationships I want, right? With people like that. I think I found that as I get older, I need fewer and fewer friends. Also, it's a tight group. It's a small group.
The loneliness comment is really interesting because it can be such an illusion. Like you feel like nobody likes me. I've gone through times, like especially growing up, where I'm like, everyone hates me. I've done everything wrong, or I said something stupid. And a lot of people struggle with social anxiety and not feeling like they can be themselves because they're not sure which version is going to show up. And they actually sort of self-isolate mentally and feel like I'm all alone, when in actuality, there are lots of people thinking of them in high regard that would love to chat on the phone or go on a walk, that, to the point you were making in our TikTok the other day, like want to hang out just as much as they do, but nobody's making the effort. And the times that I found that I find that I feel the most lonely are times when like I have sort of like self-isolated, even mentally. And I just feel like nobody's here for me. Like it becomes kind of an existential thing. And in reality, come to find out, everyone's loving you and cheering you on, thinking you're awesome. I think
right.
Also,
and if you reached out, they want to be there. They would do just about anything. Name it. Name the date and time. I'm there for you.
I know. Yeah. And even in this like podcast exploration and project that we're doing, like if nobody likes a post, like it doesn't mean that hundreds of people didn't actually see it, enjoy it, like go to listen, but like we're looking for the physical marker, of did someone engage with this? Like, so people say to me all the time, I saw your thing and it made me take this action. I'm like, well, leave a comment, like how would I know? So it's really interesting how the loneliness happens, but like it's not an effect of your relationships.
I think you bring up a really good component of this, that in order to have meaningful variety of connections, we have to be connected to ourselves first. It's when we are looking for the connection externally to fill the void that we have internally is where we get into that trouble, or it feels like it's never enough. Like we're constantly searching for the next friend group or the next relationship or whatever to fill that like uncomfortable unsettledness within us. And it's like in doing the internal work. And I feel like this is why it's changed my friendship so much from 20s to 30s even, because in my 20s, I was just like, I want more friends. I want to hang out with more people. I want to like deepen these friend groups. I had gigantic friend groups that were all, I wouldn't say all, but I would say the larger volume of them, a lot of them were very surface level. How can you go deep with 100 people? You know what I mean? Like you feel so seen and needed because you're in a group chat with like hundreds of people and you're all making plans for the weekend. But do you even know any of them? Do you know what the conversation is? And it wasn't until I met myself and was like, who the hell am I? Like, what do I actually want? What do I value? How do I want to set up my life? How do I want to live day to day? That became the indicator of how I wanted to then connect. It was like, oh, I really value these things. And so I want to connect with people who value them too. So we have a common ground, but until you know what lights you up, it's really hard to understand who you want to connect with, because then you're just like, what do they call it? Like dust in the wind. You're just like blowing around with everything else.
Well, don't you think as we get older, we crave being around people who feel really safe and secure in themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That you can pick it up so quickly. Mm-hmm. That sense of peace that a person has, calm, inner calm, when you meet them, when they feel really comfortable in their skin, the tone of the conversation, the pace of speech, right? The willingness to pause, It's a really interesting thing that I wasn't aware of any of that in my like 20s and 30s. It was kind of like what you were saying, Jess. It was just a more stay busy, kind of a FOMO driven way of participating in everything. In fact, in my 20s, I thought, and when people would ask me to describe my personality, I would say extroverted. Oh, I'm totally an extrovert, which is kind of hilarious because I am not. I mean, I consider myself an ambivert. Like I can and enjoy being social and engaging with others, but then I got to go kind of cocoon to recharge, you know? And I had no awareness of that. But if I look back at my rhythms, that's what I was doing with no awareness that that's what was going on. Just a constant chase for sort of all the things that I thought I needed to, I don't know, whatever, define myself as, I don't know, successful or highly functional. I don't know what I was going for.
Yeah. It's an interesting point around like remembering what your own energy feels like. Like when I go through times of like being so social, and then sometimes I feel resistant to like being by myself. And then after like a couple of hours, I'm like, oh, it feels good to be me. You know, like I'm not thinking about or absorbing or feeling other people's stuff. Like this is how it feels to be in my body, experiencing my thoughts in my own environment. And I feel like I go through phases of like being really internal or really external, and I'm sort of like on one wave, and like always working to find the balance. Like the last year I was like mostly in solitude, and I don't know, for no reason at all. I just spent all my time alone. Like people would ask me to go out on a Friday and I'd be like, I'm going to bed. This year I'm like totally out and like doing all these things, and now I have to be like, spend some alone time. You know, you need this and you like it. And then like I'll get in the bath finally alone and I'll be like, oh yeah, this is nice, you know? So like having that balance and staying acquainted with who you are, so you're not just absorbing who everybody else is and molding into that.
You guys saw me go through this last summer when I had like 8 days or 6 days alone up at my home in northern Wisconsin. And I remember like texting you 2 days into it, and I was like, this is amazing. I am like the most fun. I love my company.
It's so good.
I hadn't spent that much time alone in like probably my entire life. And the one thing I actually recognized, or the big learning from that, was I love my own energy. But as a parent and a partner and all the things, I had to get away from all the people, right? I'm also an empath, so I absorb a lot. And I'm really in tune. I'm very sensitive to people around me. You know, I tune in on them. It was amazing. And then when I went back home to kids and, you know, all the things, I felt so much more congruent. And I also, when I got out of that kind of alignment, I'll call it, I knew what to do to get back into it pretty quickly. You know, like I was able to take a 45-minute walk alone and be like, oh, we got to find that again. That peacefulness, that where's the voice, my voice, you know. It was pretty powerful. It can be really easy to lose yourself. And then as soon as that happens, right, we lose our connection to ourselves, then I think our connections to others become so much more fraught.
Right.
I love that you're naming that, because I think that's something that in my 20s I was really searching for. Like I would go on long walks by myself around New York City when I lived there, really searching to reconnect with my energy. But I remember always feeling like, oh, if I just had someone with me, then this, almost as if like the experience by myself wasn't, like it didn't count.
Like if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it.
Yeah. Like I felt like, oh, I found this cute coffee shop and I'm walking around New York and I'm looking at all the cute little brownstones in West Village. But this experience doesn't really count unless I had a friend here or a partner here.
It's kind of beautiful though, Jess, because I'm thinking, I think when we long for someone to witness, you know, witness these moments in our lives, witness my big idea, witness my creativity, witness this, look at this with me. You know, I think it's a beautiful thing about you and humans in general. And it might be what causes loneliness, because a certain amount of that is okay, but a lifetime of it, it's, you know, there's no other, a lifetime of that is almost untenable.
Yeah. And it's like waiting, right? Like this will be good when somebody else is here. And waiting is painful. And waiting means you're not actually living or like marking the experience as good or fulfilling. And I do think this is where social media sort of is a magical shortcut because like now Jess goes on a hike and takes 10 pictures of the sunset and shares them and feels both the solitude and enjoyment of the sunset and the aftermath of other people
6,000
enjoying it.
people like it.
Yeah.
It's true, but I think I'm only able to get to that place where that experience feels valid on its own. Like I finally do feel like that alone time is valid and does count, whatever that means, because I value my own energy. Like before it was like my energy is not enough. It's only enough if someone else can witness it. And in me witnessing my own energy and being like, oh, this is exactly what you described, Grace. Like, this is what it feels like to be in my body and think my thoughts and look at the world through this lens. Like, that's actually what I was craving, but I thought I needed someone else to validate it. And I think now I'm like, oh, I just need to validate it. And it's so fun and so juicy. And this experience, although different than looking at it with someone else, is just as like important, if not more so, than the partnered or the friend experience doing it too.
Right. And that also has a lot to do with confidence, right? Like it's being able to say like, I like pizza. And even if the other person says, I don't like pizza, you don't change your opinion. You know, I was like in middle school, you'd be like, do you like pizza? And the person would be like, no. And you'd be like, me neither. Because you were just trying to connect, you know? Yeah. And now we're okay with being like, we may like different things and we can still connect. And here's how I perceive that situation. How did you perceive it? Like there's connection in the being with ourselves together as opposed to like trying to merge or like create a dulled down experience by like trying to be the same.
Totally. Yeah. I have this burning question in my mind. It's a little controversial and it might cause a little bit of a uproar, but I'm wondering, because I've been very lonely many, for big chunks in my life. And the last year has been an exercise in being with myself. I really some deep loneliness. But the question I have is it a choice? Is disconnection a choice? I have a perspective. I'm curious what you guys would say.
Well, I kind of want to kick off, Grace, when we're all three voice noting on this, you mentioned the difference between loneliness and being alone. So I think that is almost like, okay, what's the difference between actual internal loneliness and being physically alone? And from that point, what is the choice between the two?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about emotions, I think, is they either take us and hijack our day, and then we just go on the journey with loneliness, or we notice them and then we have a choice, right? Do I opt into this experience of loneliness, or do I feel the loneliness and let it move through me? Do I notice it and do I lovingly take it along as a passenger, but I'm still my highest self, or am I just like flat out because of it? And I think the experience you choose to have with the emotion is a choice, but it takes like fine self-awareness, to be able to see it and make a choice about like how you want to deal with it, and not be like, oh, now I can't function in a work meeting, or I can't be nice to my sibling, or I'm not able to show up. I've lost my autonomy to this emotion. And sometimes with my most kind of like emotional friends, I've noticed they kind of get addicted to it. They're like sucked into some stream of emotion, and they want to hang in it and they want to stew in it, even if there's resolution or they're not alone anymore, or we had a conversation that was uplifting. Like they can't seem to get out of the mud. And I think it's the difference between like loving yourself and your emotions are a part of yourself and being taken down by emotionalism. And I do think we have a choice.
I think too, the first thing when you said that, I was like, oh, I think it is a choice as well, to a certain, especially especially when it comes to connection, but it's a choice. It's a choice that sometimes our higher self is not making. It's a choice like our inner children, or like if you think about it through the lens of internal family systems, it's a choice that our like wounded part is making. And so then I'm like, okay, why would someone make that choice? If they're feeling lonely and they want connection, why don't they just reach out and call their friend? You know, why are they stuck in the emotion? Why would anyone choose to stay lonely? And I think you have to think about like, okay, well, what's the hidden benefit? If they felt isolated, let's say as a child, or even in their experience, I think about like, especially when people get divorced, like that feeling of loneliness that comes in that separation. They really want to feel validated in that experience. They want someone to say like, wow, that does seem really lonely, or that does, like they want someone to really see that they struggled or went through that emotional experience so they can release it. But I think sometimes people hold on to the emotion because they're like, no, you're not really seeing me. Like, I don't really feel seen here. I don't really feel like my experience is being validated. So I feel like that's partially why people might choose to stay there. Or they're just looking to get, you know, connection through sympathy for their loneliness. What do you guys think?
It's the same thing as you going on a walk and needing somebody else to be there, you know? It's saying like, I'm sad and I need someone else to witness it, to like validate back to me that I am sad. And it's not to say that people don't have long wrestlings with sadness or loneliness. Like, we're not trying to say spiritual bypass, like just ignore it. Or if you're feeling, you know, lonely for a month, that like, you know, you're just a total loser and you could opt out and choose something else. Like everything is coming up so that you can feel it, be with it, move through it. But you don't have to stay stuck in it. And I think like that is the key differentiator of like, don't let it take you down, but also don't ignore it, because if you ignore it, it is still a passenger. Everything we ignore, it just comes with us, right? Until we give it the space. So I think that's a good distinction too.
How do you see it, Sarah?
I recognize that a lot of the times when I'm feeling loneliness really weighing heavy on me and keeping me from being able to really enjoy my life or see, you know, the things that are really good around me, it's a choice I'm really making. But I don't know why I'm being so cautious. I guess I don't want to offend anybody, right? But there are billions of people on the planet. I have a very small group of friends. Every time I am struggling with something, it's usually because I'm making a choice about it, right? I'm holding on to something that just isn't possible. I'm refusing to accept the uncertainty of life, right? I'm wanting more reassurance than the world could possibly give, right? I'm missing something in myself. I'm lacking something. You know, those are all choices I'm making. I've been kind of tough on myself over the last year in this regard, as to like challenging my own mindset. You know, like and really kind of holding my feet to the fire to look at these moments and really try to look underneath the hood and figure out what's really going on with it. And almost every time I've done that, I really see myself making a choice. I'm living in the past, usually. I'm connecting to something that didn't go right, or I'd wish had gone differently, right? Or I'm hanging on to something I want in the future that hasn't happened yet, and I'm frustrated that I can't make it happen. But when I sit in the present moment, right, and just take in all that is right here in front of me, acknowledging the uncertainty that comes with just being a human being, a lot of the challenges that I'm facing dissolve, because they're all either related to the past or worries about the present. And loneliness, right, is this lack of, this absence of, right, missing something. But if I'm just sitting in the present moment, really contemplating and being in the reality of myself as this loving being, right, was born good and, you know, all those things, what's missing? What's missing? Nothing. You know, I have all I need. I have all I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, because it's been actually quite hard at times to really, really push myself on this. But a lot of those uncomfortable feelings are really a reflection of my own mental, like, fragility, right? And really working on that has shifted things pretty dramatically for me.
Well, you take your power back, instead of like this
that.
is happening to me. I am the victim of this circumstance okay, this is challenging and hard, but what do I want? What do I want to create? What choice do I want to make? And just test it from that place.
Yeah.
I think connection is so interesting because we're so wired for connection for survival. Like you think back to like tribal days, like you had to stay in the pack with the tribe. If you veered off by yourself, you're going to be eaten by a lion, you know what I mean? Or a bear or whatever. So literally our nervous systems are like, don't leave the pack, don't leave the pack. But we're in such a different day and age where that's not really a threat as it used to be. And so we're having this autonomy of getting to choose the packs we want to be a part of. We're getting to choose the relationships we want to be a part of. And I think one of the things for me, and I'm curious for you guys, that has been so helpful it's kind of like cleaning up your side of the street, right? Like if you can take care of your connection to self, really deepen your connection to self, you can have deep and meaningful connections with others. Even if that is just, a meaningful connection when you get your coffee in the morning from the barista, to the friend that you've had for 40 years, to the friend that you talk to every single day. Like all of those relationships can feel very fulfilling in different ways if that connection to self is strong. And I think one thing that has helped me tremendously is understanding how I'm connected to everything in a spiritual sense. Like without that belief, I think I would feel a lot more lonely.
Yeah.
But I feel so connected to a higher power, a spiritual sense in such a strong way, at least at this stage in my life, that it's like I could never not be connected. I could never be lonely. I'm always connected. Like even walking outside and looking at the trees, I'm like, I'm connected. We are connected as I'm walking and looking at the trees or looking at the sunset. And I think that has really helped the loneliness piece and needing validation from others to fill that for me.
Yeah, I feel that big time. And also what you said, Sarah, about like the loneliness coming when you're in a state of thinking about the past or the future or indecision or control, like that's all us trying to figure out the how of life when we need to be giving the how to the divine. And I think like everything is all sort of wrapped up in our connection to something higher, something more loving, guiding us along the way that has a more divine plan for us. And when we can surrender to that, and people who believe in God or don't believe in God, like life is uncertain regardless, right? Like there's no amount of hedging or planning. So if we can't prove it either way, like I would rather defer to a benevolent source leading us to our right solutions. And so I think in sort of going to the higher place about it, like you find your connection and your answer to, I'm not going to find a solution to this. Like I can't go back and fix something. And actually, if it's happened, it must be perfect because I'm right here and I have infinite potential to create my reality right here if I stay right here. And with that, it's like an unlimited sense of abundance. And how could you be lonely in abundance, you know? So it's a really, really good point.
I love that we've gone down this particular, tangential path around loneliness, because we're at a place in our world where, like, I don't know, I think church attendance is at an all-time low, but that connection for me to universe, to source of goodness, to, whatever you want to name it, has always been this very, very reassuring kind of reality for me. I mean, I talk about this in one of the first episodes of the podcast from last season. I was dealing with my cancer treatment, and I'd come back from radiation and I was really sick, and I got myself to my bed and I laid on the bed, and I had this big window overlooking a parking lot and then Lake Michigan, because that's where the Northwestern campus is. And I figured out if I propped my head up just so, I didn't see the parking lot. I could only see the lake. And I would watch the sun come up over the lake every morning. And I knew that if the sun rose, then I was going to be okay, right? This connection to just the infinite of it's a new day, right? A new chance, a new opportunity. I think sometimes we've overblown this, like, well, Kim Kardashian has 15 million followers or whatever. However, I mean, I'm nobody, right? Right? The extremes of validation that exist in our world that are so out in front and so prominent in the media. We forget about the little things. Like, really, it only takes one person, right? Maybe one sunrise, one sunset, in your case, Jess, because that's your favorite, right? One walk, one good friend, one talk, one smile on a sidewalk. If we look for it, I think if we really look for it, there are opportunities to feel connected and whole everywhere around us. We've lost, I think some level we've lost the ability to see it, or some of us have. We don't see it, or we're looking for lightning strikes, right? And we're not seeing dandelions in the cracks of the sidewalk.
It always amazes me, I've lived in big cities for the last more than a decade, between New York and Chicago, LA. And it's so interesting going back to my suburban hometown in New Jersey, or even when I'm in the suburbs outside of Chicago, how many people interact on a regular basis. They pass their neighbors on the street and they stop and they say hello, and how uncommon that is in a big city, and how Daniel and I always say to each other whenever we travel somewhere, we're like, oh, it's so nice to just like stop and chat with like Doug from down the street because his dog is like having a crazy day, or I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, you hear these random life stories, and I feel like that is the patchwork that life is built on, those interactions. And I think I've been trying to make a really concerted effort, especially when I come back into the city, to not disconnect, to not wave or say hello to the person I pass. I'm going to be that hiker that's going to be like, hi, as I pass you on the street. Like, that meme is me. You know what I mean? Like, I will say hello. Like, we are both on a hike. We're passing each other. Did you see that up there? So cool. Okay, bye. Like, those moments of interaction, I think are really important in just opening our capacity to hold deeper connection.
Yeah, Midwest nice. It's the way to be. It's the way to be. I mean,
so good. Where my house is, it's like situated in like a little sort of valley alongside like coffee shops and stuff. So I have that sense of like, good morning, like to my neighbors and the coffee shop. I see the same people over and over again. And it's the first time I've ever had that. I've lived in so many different places and apartments and had different phases. A couple years ago, I moved to New York City for 4 months and then undid it because I was like, this is so lonely. And there's so many people in New York City, but I was just like in my apartment only, working from home. And like, I'd walk outside and everybody was so busy. And it was like, you would think it's so easy to connect there. But it's in putting myself in a more small town environment in the middle of LA, but still that has given me that like Gilmore sense of like, good morning, I see you're going to class again today. And like the barista knows who I am. And it's like, you went on a date here last night, you ate the burger. And I'm like, that was me,
awesome.
Yeah. You really just need to leave the house. Also, like, so many people are not leaving the house. They're like on apps and on different things. And we got to push ourselves to go out there and give and be the one to give the smile, to Jess's point.
Well, that's a great point. Like, what should we do about it? Right.
Yeah.
So you got to leave the house, right?
Yeah.
You got to leave the house.
I know. Basics.
And, I mean, whether that means you take a class or you go to a coffee shop and you choose to work there, or you just start by saying hi to people that you meet and are greeting or passing you. I mean, simple things, but any opportunity to leave your home and get your face out of a screen.
Get out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. Let the sun shine on it. Let's start there. And then look around and see what other people are doing the same thing.
Totally. One other thing I wanted to pose to the group is finding the people that connect in the same way you do. Like we all like to talk about interpersonal dynamics, spirituality. Like we would leave a party and be excited to have a postmortem. Like, what did you think of that person and what happened here? And why do you think they were doing that? But I've had friends in the past where we just like don't connect on the same stuff. Like, I had someone I dated for a long time did not want to talk about that. Like I'd be like, so what did you think of Jess? And he'd be like, she was nice. And I'm like, serious? Like, how are we connecting? You know? And he wanted to talk about like AI and art and all this stuff. And that stuff's all great, but I don't really care, you know? And when you find people where you're like, it just flowed and we feel so inspired and we wanted to talk about all the same stuff. And for some people that may be AI and art, but for me, it just wasn't, you know, I'm more like EQ conversations. So what do we do if like, you know, we're like, I really like Mary, like nothing against Mary, but we're just not really connecting. And like, can I let go of this friendship? Like, can I lean into the ones where I feel like I can be myself more? Like, I just think that's kind of an interesting thing to talk about.
Well, there's seasons for people in our lives. I really believe that, you know, and we're going to be evolving and growing likely if you're that kind of person. And it's quite possible that the people that are closest to you might have to, if they don't evolve and grow with you, then you might part ways. You know, there's something about a lot of fear around, right? Letting go of people that don't really align with us anymore. I don't know how that necessarily came to be, but I've come to see that that's part of life too. I've certainly changed a lot in the last 53 years. It's kind of amazing to me that the high school friend that I had lunch with and I connected on so many things. I was kind of blown away by it because I feel like I've changed so much. And it might just be our way of connecting is still the same. So it doesn't really matter so much the topic. You know, I don't know. I would advise people just to not fret so much about letting go of those things that don't align in your life.
Yeah. And I think it can feel natural, like especially I think people think it has to be like this big breakup friendship or whatever. People kind of know, you know, you can kind of sense like this isn't really, we're not on the same page here. Obviously, if they are totally unaware and do not know, then maybe you may have to have a bigger conversation with them. But I think you can just start scheduling in other interactions, you know, start scheduling in more time with someone else versus the other person. Oh, sorry, I'm busy this weekend. I have this and that, you know, and then naturally it can kind of run its course and move its path. I've also found I'll just kind of naturally gravitate towards other friends when I see certain friendships are like not aligning. And at some point they'll circle back and they've evolved. And now they're no longer stuck in that, you know, Debbie Downer mindset they were in a year ago. Now they've transformed and had an epiphany, and now I can hold space for this new version of them. So I think also giving people the grace to change and grow and evolve at their own pace too. But yeah, it can feel, I know it feels like it has to be this very like, you're either in my circle or you're out. It can feel a lot more fluid than that.
Yeah, it's a good point. When I stopped trying to change people, and you know, we all have those relationships where we're like kind of trying to give a suggestion without giving the suggestion. Like, let me just tell you about my workout routine because I think you might need to work out, or let me just tell you about inner child work because you sure need to look at your inner child. Like, as soon as I let go of any places where I'm doing that, to your point, the person changes on their own time. Like the relationships are the worst when I hang out trying to change them, even if I think it's coming from a good place or whatever. So allowing for that space and change to happen and you not having to control it is so big.
And then it's less stressful. You don't have to caretake someone else's journey. You can just let them, you can be like, okay, I see you in your journey. Okay.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because none of us would enjoy somebody telling us what to do.
No,
we would not.
And yet we seem, I've gotten so much better at not offering unsolicited advice.
Huge.
It took a long time, because I just wanted to share all my font of useless knowledge, right? And to most people, it is useless. Now I'm going to wait for somebody to ask me for the most part, and then, you might get an earful, but you asked.
Yeah. And what else could you do? What else could you do with your energy,
Right.
How do you think people should think about connection and community and stress? Like, how can they see the benefits of good connection and their stress?
Well, there's interesting research coming out of like the blue zones, right? And they don't just look at what people eat and how they move, but they look at how they live in community, right? And there's really interesting research coming out about the healing power of connection and also kind of the preventative nature of it, right? How it helps prevent, like coronary artery disease seems to be like at an all-time low in the blue zones. Well, why is it? Is it because of what they eat? Is it also because they're connected or because they're moving? There's some good data that's starting to emerge. I think we can agree that stress in isolation is more stressful.
Yeah.
Hard things carried alone are heavier. And I don't know that anyone would debate us on that. Rarely is being isolated and alone and disconnected. Does it make your life better, richer, easier, fuller, healthier, more vital? We are social beings. That is how we were created and designed to live. I know that for me, when I'm alone and stressed, I'm more likely to get in my head. And that's a dangerous place to be because that's then I'm in the past and in the future and the uncertainty is just driving me crazy and I'm kind of spinning. But the minute I get connected with someone and start having a conversation with them about whatever it is I'm stressed, first of all, I'm putting it out there. I'm getting it outside myself so I can look at it differently. But even if the person just listens, there's a sense of a sharedness now. I'm not alone in it. Some of the challenges I've had, with kids who are very sick, nobody can solve that problem for me. But just having someone listen is a huge, huge advantage to managing a difficult situation like that better.
Yeah, I was going to say that exactly. Out of your head and into the moment. Other people really do that for you, especially like if you've been stewing and stuff, which is the most toxic place to be, is in our own heads. And I feel like maybe that's why things have ramped up so much because we're overthinking so much, right? We're comparing so much. We're anxious so much. We're thinking we should have done this already. Look at Kim Kardashian. I'm way behind. How am I ever going to catch up to 15 million followers, And that's all just like mental and it's not serving us. And as soon as you get with somebody else, you're like snap out of it and you have to have an interest in someone else. You have to give something. You have to respond to what they're saying. You have to actively listen and like check your thinking at the door. Like there's just so much in terms of personal growth that it offers you and gets you out of your head and back into that active state of creation and presence and care and love, and that we can carry forward.
I interviewed Nicole's neuroscience, Nicole Vignola, on Expanded a while back, and she was talking about how when we are stuck in our heads ruminating, it's basically like an open loop. Like we cannot close the loop to a final like solution that we want to do in our heads. But if we journal it out or we share it like audibly, we have to do it in a way that is narrative. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that closes the loop. That allows us to find a resolve, a solution. So instead of something just circling, we're never going to get the resolution we're looking for in our minds if we keep it in our minds. But if we get it on paper, or if we audibly share it through a voice note or a phone call or an in-person conversation with someone, we can actually get to close the loop and get to the resolution that we're looking for. So there is data and neuroscience that backs up this basically conclusion to your stress response. Like, can you close the stress loop? Can you close the worried thought? Not if it's in your head. You got to get it out.
That's a good tip.
I love that. I had that experience last week, Tuesday. Spinning on something. A friend of mine, we had made a plan to have some tea. I didn't know I was going to be spinning on the topic, but I was just caught in it. And she was the kind of person who I could just talk about it with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I walked away from that hour and a half that we spent together feeling so much lighter, so much resolve. I mean, it was amazing. And it carried me through the rest of the week.
Amazing.
All she did was listen and validate, right? But it closed the loop. I love having that now little idea in my head, or, in my toolkit. I got to close this loop. We can't keep going like this. So what are my options for that?
And it demystifies the fear or the anxiety or the stress or whatever it is when you bring it out. I remember, I forget what it was, but I remember having a conversation where I was like so worried and anxious about this one thing. And then I shared it with Daniel, my fiance, and he was like, yeah, everybody does that. What do you mean? And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, that's like so normal. And I was like, oh. And then all of a sudden it was like a wave washed over me where I was like, I didn't have to be worrying about that at all, And like, how many times do we have that experience where we think, oh, it's only me and this is such a big deal and all these things. And then you share it with someone else. They're like, oh yeah, I've been through that. It's fine. And you're like, oh, okay, great. Amazing. It just relieves so much feeling seen in that way.
Yeah. And we forget that like whatever we're stressed about, like could change in every instance. Like I always think about like when you get a hormone test, it's like a snapshot of your hormones the moment you take the test, and a minute later your hormones change. And we move forward with the hormone test snapshot being like, this is where I'm at, when you're somewhere totally different in an hour, and that's sort of how life is. It's like, okay, there's a glimpse of like, your temperature right now, but like, are we going to stay there or are we going to move into a new state? Because life wants us to keep moving and not hang on to a limited state of being.
I'm thinking back to when we first met 2 years ago, right? And we're getting ready to figure out how to launch a podcast together. And one of the things I kept saying to you guys is I want to collaborate. I want this to be collaborative, and really feel like we're doing something together. That was a choice. It was very intentional. I was at a time in my life where I wanted to bring in new energy, new ideas. I was definitely looking to, this was part of the path of kind of not, I don't know, reinventing, but like finding myself in a different way. And as a society, we could all use a little more intentionality about how we do things. And it could probably alleviate some of the suffering that people feel. If at the end of if at the beginning of the day we thought about how do I want to be in community and connect with another human today, and we made that as important as like, I don't know, getting our work done or getting to the gym or doing the laundry or whatever it is we have to do, or integrating it into those things, we might not be as lonely. We don't all live in these little villages where we were born and we're going to live our lives and die. Our communities aren't pre-made for us for the most part, right? Our families are spread across the country. Our circumstances have changed. Our work is virtual. We don't have to go into offices. We don't have to see each other. We're not communing with nature as we till the land. We have to be more intentional about all kinds of things. We've talked this whole this whole season has been a lot about intentionality in terms of how you take care of yourself. Well, staying connected to other people is no different. You got to exercise some discipline about it. I guess that's maybe what was behind my question of, is loneliness a choice? I think there's a discipline in staying connected. To be a good friend, like to have a good friend, you have to be a good friend. It requires some effort on your part, right? Consistency, reliability, transparency, honesty, authenticity, all those things. Well, I think we could all use a little more intentionality about this in our world. A little more intentional effort to connect. Wouldn't be a terrible thing, I don't think.
Agreed. Well, that's an amazing note to wrap up.
I know.
Well, perhaps. Well, this has been a really good season, and it's been really fun to do this again with you guys.
It's
and
been
I'm
so
really
fun.
excited about all the things we're thinking about for next season.
I know. It's also amazing how we never really know what we're going to talk about on these calls. So they're like a surprise and a treat for us too. So this was a really fun one.
Yeah, I feel really connected.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Enjoy.